It's good to see everybody here. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence your electronic devices, and that includes us up here. You have to buy everybody dinner if your phone rings up here. So.
Ooh, that's a new one.
All right, yeah, new rules. So if you would, please stand and join me for the invocation and the pledge. Lord, we ask your blessings upon our meeting tonight. Grant us wisdom to do the right thing according to your will. Help us to always promote the common good of all in our amazing city and to remember those less fortunate. We ask this as one community, diverse and yet united. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. So for those of you who haven't joined us in the past few months, we've started doing a kind of a fun historical Temple Terrace fact at the beginning of each meeting. It was Council Member Fernandez's idea, and so far it's been pretty fun. I like it. It's a good idea. So this month, or this meeting, it is Council Member Schistler's turn to share a fun fact with us, and we'll be the judge whether it's fun.
Not necessarily fun, but it is interesting. And forgive my Spanish accent or lack thereof. Spanish exploration of the Temple Terrace area dates back to 1757, when explorer Don Francisco Maria Calais of the Spanish Royal Fleet made his way up the Hillsborough River, naming it El Rio de San Julian y Aragio, to what is now River Hills Park in search of pine trees to use as the masts for his ships. Here in the extensive longleaf pine forest, he erected a cross in which he named El Peñal de la Cruz de Santa Teresa, the pine forest of the cross of St. Teresa. Confirmation of the fleet's travels is found in its maps and logbooks. A historical marker and a replica of the cross erected to honor St. Teresa is found in the River Hills Park today. Up to 1913, the longleaf pine, sand live oak, and cypress trees made the area suitable for turpentine manufacturing and logging. There's our fun fact for this week.
Very good. Was that fun? All right.
I didn't butcher it too bad.
Thank you very much, Gil. Our next item is a certificate of recognition for Kingsley Kelly for her service. Would you please approach the podium? Welcome, Ms. Kelly. And as a longtime serving member of our school support committee, I'm going to allow Councilmember Schistler to read the certificate for us.
Thank you.
We worked together for 4 years on the school support committee, and your efforts and your knowledge and everything, that your contributions are beyond belief. So, in certificate of appreciation to Kingsley Kelly, in recognition of her 5 years of invaluable civic service to the city of Temple Terrace, and for her dedication as a member of the school support committee and 4 years of service as vice mayor, awarded this 21st day of March 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A big number.
Yes. Would you like to share a few words with us?
I've enjoyed every minute. I'm in the process of renovating my home and have 2 70-pound puppies, so I need a little break, but I will be back. So I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very, very much.
We should just put an X on the front
Yeah.
so that everybody knows.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month. I believe we have Corporal Tandra Mahalapanis. I know, I can't,
It's a lie.
I know, normally I just call you Tandra because so thank you for being here. So, whereas the city of Temple Terrace's future prosperity depends on the healthy development of the children living in Hillsborough County, growing and learning within our diverse community, and whereas children who experience adverse childhood experiences are at a higher risk of short and long-term physical, psychological, and behavioral challenges that can impact the individual child and the greater community. Whereas child abuse and neglect is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future quality of life of a community. And whereas parents and caregivers who are provided with social support and resources are better equipped to provide safe and nurturing experiences for their children. Whereas the Department of Children and Family Services works to develop effective child abuse prevention strategies through partnerships created with citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas the Department of Children, Families, and the Children's Board, in collaboration with Prevent Child Abuse Florida's Pinwheels for Prevention campaign, will be engaging communities throughout Hillsborough County in a coordinated effort to prevent child abuse and neglect by promoting awareness of healthy childhood development, positive parenting practices, and the types of concrete support families need within their communities. Now, therefore, I, Andrew Ross, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, do hereby set aside April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. So, thank you. So, Corporal, I see you've brought some things here, so I suspect you'd like to share a few things with us.
Well, so I have the sign and the pinwheels, and since April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, you'll start seeing around the city pinwheels, blue pinwheels that we're going to place out in various locations just to bring awareness to Child Abuse Awareness Month for April.
Very good. Thank you, Corporal. So what can people in the city, what can the people in the community do to help bring awareness to this and to support you or this organization?
Well, they can also put pinwheels out. I know for us, the Children's Board, depending on how many you need, are kind enough to give free pinwheels out if you make arrangements with them. Or you can draw them, have kids do arts and craft projects, which is actually really cool, so you can talk to the kids about them. But it's more so of the see something, say something. So if there's something going on or you suspect that there's a child that's being abused or there's concerns, just reach out to somebody and let them know. There's also a child abuse hotline that you can contact if need be.
Very good. Thank you, Tandra.
You're welcome.
Oh, yes.
Oops.
See, we're even. You had all those Spanish words to pronounce. And
Yeah, but you had the big one.
okay, it's all downhill, I think, from here.
Okay.
Next up is a Municipal Code Enforcement Board regular member appointment. There's one vacancy on the Municipal Code Enforcement Board for a term extending from March 21st, 2023 till March 21, 2026. The city received one application from alternate member Gina D'Angelo. I don't think Ms. D'Angelo is here tonight, right? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the appointment of Ms. D'Angelo as a regular member of the Code Enforcement Board?
Move to approve Gina D'Angelo as a regular member of the Municipal Code Enforcement Board.
And
Second.
a second. Okay. Any discussion of the appointment? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays. Ms. D'Angelo is watching. Thank you for your service, and we appreciate you stepping up. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes of our March 7th meeting? If so, is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No nays. Minutes are approved. Persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. Council, well, let's see, a 3-minute time limit is, 3-minute time limit is imposed on all speakers from the public. We do ask that you approach the podium and begin with your name and city of residence. I do not currently have any requests to speak, although I see we have one in the queue. If there are members of the public who wish to address the council at this time, the forms are in the back of the room, and you may provide them to the city clerk, and we will call you next. And welcome, Ms. Snelling. Yes, you may. Good evening.
All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Well, I haven't given an update on Delta 8 in a while, so I'm fresh back from Tallahassee, spent the day there yesterday, went up in the morning, came back at night. It was quite a trip. But I did get to go speak before the Agriculture Committee, Senate Agriculture Committee on SB 1676. And I have really good news. It passed with 6 yeas and 2 nays. So it'll go to the next one. But I just wanted to show you, this was one of our props. And it's just showing the Skittles. And I know you've heard me talk about the Skittles before. But this shows the regular Skittles versus the THC Skittles and how close they are. And we use this to educate mainly for parents and teachers and anyone else who's interested. But we're just trying to get the word out about how there's THC candy sold in convenience stores and gas stations. But like I said, there's a bill that did pass yesterday. It's going to go to one more committee in the Senate. And then in the House, the bill is 1475, sponsored by Will Robinson, Manatee County. And that might be considered on Monday morning. And so just to summarize the bill, it does focus on Delta 8, Delta 10, and all those isomers, which are just different forms of THC. And they limit these packages to one serving is 0.5 milligrams of THC, whereas right now I've seen candies with 100 milligrams in one piece. And then the package can only have 2 milligrams of THC. So that's a huge change. And it basically allows any type of CBD products with just a trace of THC. So all the CBD products will still be available, which, I know a lot of people use that and it's not considered intoxicating at all. So that's the gist of it. And we were greatly outnumbered by people from the hemp industry. So that was very interesting. There was, I would say, probably 50 people in the room representing businesses, and their argument was all that they're going to go out of business. So they were concerned about the economics of it. But the way I look at it is if you have a product that's not going to harm children or adults or make people drive under the influence, then we're all for it. So, but I just wanted to let everybody know that because I know we've talked before with the city council, and I just want to give you an update. I'm so excited about it at the state level. There's something happening. So that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Snelling. Are there other members of the public who wish to address the council? Okay. All right, next we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No nays. Consent agenda is approved. Next item is a second public hearing and second reading of an ordinance approving the zoning reclassification of 5210 East Fowler Avenue, otherwise known as RZP 22-03. I will open the public hearing and ask anyone who intends to speak on this matter to stand for the oath administered by the city clerk.
Swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Very good. City Attorney, would you please poll for ex parte communications?
If each one of you would please state whether you have received any ex parte communication regarding this matter, either verbally or in writing. If you have received anything in writing, then please supply a copy of that to the clerk. And for whether it is verbal or in writing, please state now whether what the sum and substance of the conversation was, who you had this conversation with or this contact with, and when this occurred. And if we can start with Ms. Hernandez.
None.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
Very good, thank you. And Senior Planner Gus Carpus is here to explain.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. So what you have before you is the second reading and adoption of Ordinance 1545 to approve the rezoning classification of 5210 East Fowler Avenue. This is a 1.08 acre lot that's currently zoned commercial office, and they are seeking to rezone it to commercial general to make it consistent with the adjacent properties. The next slide will show what it looks like. The existing use on the property is a medical office building, which is considered a permitted use in the commercial office, but also in the commercial general. The future land use for this property is commercial. So as you see here, the subject property is zoned commercial office. It is the only property zoned commercial office. As you look down Fowler Avenue, those to the east and west and to the south are all zoned commercial general. And so they're seeking to rezone this one also to commercial general. And as I said, it currently contains a medical office building, which is a permitted use in both the zoning districts, the existing and the proposed. The intent is to rezone the property to make it consistent to those around it. And then since this isn't a rezoning to a PD, there is no conceptual plan required to be shown at this time. The Development Review Committee did look at this application and had no objections. The Planning Commission staff reviewed it and had no issues with it, felt it was consistent. And then on March 7th, the City Council did review this and approved the first reading of the ordinance. So staff still recommends approval for the adoption of Ordinance 1545, approving the rezoning classification of this property from commercial office to commercial general. The applicant is here if there are any questions for her.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Carpus. I do see the applicant's representative is here. Would you like to make any presentations or statements or anything? It's optional, you don't have to. Good evening.
Good evening, Isabel Albert with HAF. No, I just want to thank staff for helping us get through this, and I appreciate everyone's support.
Very good, thank you. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Not council members, are there questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, very good. If there are no questions, I'll close the public hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning 1.08 plus/minus acres of real property addressed as 5210 East Fowler Avenue with a folio number of 036861-0000 from zoning classification commercial office to commercial general for RZP 22-03, providing for amendment to the official zoning map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Ordinance 1545 upon second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion of the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays. Ordinance is adopted on second reading. Thank you, Mr. Carpus. Next item is a resolution approving an agreement with Temple Terrace Community Garden, Inc. Leisure Services Director Carl Langfield is here to explain. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I come tonight to request a resolution authorizing the city manager to approve an agreement between the city and Temple Terrace Community Garden, Inc. for the use of designated spaces at River Hills Park and on right-of-way property at 6098 East 113th Avenue for community gardens. Back in 2012, the Temple Terrace Community Garden Group approached City Council requesting permission to establish a community garden at River Hills Park. City Council did approve that request, and a community garden has been thriving at River Hills Park since. In 2016, the group came back to City Council again, requesting permission to establish another community garden on the right-of-way property at 6098 East 113th Avenue, which is adjacent to Linwood Park. That request was also granted by City Council. Recently, I did some research into the community garden and found that there was no fully executed formal agreement that existed between the city and the community garden for the existence of these gardens. So, working with the garden group and our legal department, we drafted an agreement and presenting that to you tonight, requesting authorization for the city manager to execute. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Langfield. Are you here representing the garden club, sir? Oh, here we go. Would you like to say anything? You're welcome. Good. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Nancy Petrel, and I am representing the Temple Terrace Community Garden. I just want to make a note that we are not Temple Terrace Community Garden, Inc. We are not incorporated. We are nonprofit. We make no money. We're just a bunch of people out gardening. So no incorporated.
Okay. Very good. So does the agreement, Mr. Schoen, need to be amended? I don't recall when I read the agreement if it says Inc. or just.
It does say Inc. I prior to drafting this agreement, I did do some research into this. I did speak to Ms. Donahue, who was involved with the community garden. She did some research into the incorporation status of the community garden and did find that it is incorporated with the state. I will double check and confirm all of this in the morning, but when this was originally put together, this question did come up as to whether they were actually an incorporated organization. And Ms. Donahue was able to confirm that they were, but I will confirm all of this again in the morning before I have
Okay.
this.
Well, that's just a Sunbiz search. So,
Yes, and that's what Ms. Donahue did.
but we could easily, if the council chose to, we could approve this agreement tonight and make that a Scrivener's error. I mean, you could change that without coming back to us.
We want to find out whether the incorporated entity is, what the status of it is.
Still active.
We don't know.
Microphone?
Oh, I saw that. We need to know whether it's still functioning, or whether it dissolved. We need to know what the status is, and we can look that up. So you can approve that generally, and we'll just have the correct language on the document done before you sign.
Correct. Okay, very good. Are there members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Okay, council member questions? Is that yes?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Well, first, I do want to point out, you can be incorporated and be nonprofit, so they're not mutually exclusive. And I agree with the city attorney that we just need to find out the status of the organization that we're signing the agreement with. However, my question is, there are other areas in the city that might potentially come forward as someone requesting community garden use. Would that require a separate agreement?
I believe that we could probably just do an addendum to this agreement to add a new garden, should council approve a new garden in a new location, that we would just execute an addendum to this agreement.
Okay,
add-
I mean, I
adding
know, I
additional
don't
location.
know of any in the works at this moment. I'm just, just wondering.
I don't think we would need to reinvent the wheel and create a whole brand-new agreement for a new garden. If it's operating under the same umbrella of Temple Terrace Community Garden, we would just do an addendum to this agreement, adding a new location.
Okay.
Other questions? If there are no other questions and no public comment, is there a motion?
I move to approve the resolution to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Temple Terrace Community Garden, Inc. to formally allow for the use of designated spaces in River Hills Park and on the right-of-way property at 6098 East 113th Avenue for community gardens. And do I need to add the addendum that based on the current and legal name of the organization.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Yes, good, thank you. Motion.
Second.
I don't know, that was a tie.
All right.
I'll give it to Vice Mayor Chambers
go.
as the second. A motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Not. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. The agreement is approved for adoption. Thank you. Next item is a resolution approving purchase of tennis court lighting from NGU Sports Lighting. And Leisure Services Director Carl Langfeld is here to explain that too.
Good evening.
Good
Again,
evening.
Thank you. I'm here tonight requesting a resolution to purchase tennis court lights for the tennis courts at the Family Recreation Complex, which would include demolition of the existing lights and poles, new equipment installation from NG Sports Lighting LLC, utilizing Sourcewell contract pricing, contract number 071619-CPL in the amount of $278,600. Fiscal year 2022-23 budget includes funding for this project in the amount of $250,000. CIT reserves will cover the additional $28,600. The lights at this facility were the metal halide lights that were installed with the construction of the tennis courts back in 1998. Consists of 40 poles and 48 light fixtures with an average foot candle on the courts of between 25 and 30 foot candles. The new lighting system will consist of 20 light poles and 48 LED fixtures, which are far more efficient than what we currently have, with an average foot candle on the court of 35 foot candles. The pricing utilizing a Sourcewell contract was reviewed by our finance department and was found to be consistent with the city's purchasing procedures. I will stand for any questions you may have.
Good, thank you, Mr. Langfeld. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council members' questions. Councilmember Schisler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The increased lighting capacity or increased whatever it is, the increased lighting on the court. Do we anticipate any issues with the folks on Heatherton or across the street of Gillette? Is there going to be any bleed over?
This was a question that I asked for the representative from NGO Lighting, who I believe is in the audience with us tonight. And we spoke specifically about light pollution and light spillage. The lighting systems that we are considering for this project are extremely efficient and extremely accurate with minimal light spillage and light pollution outside of the area that they are trying to light. The poles that are being used are the same height as what we currently have at the facility. They're no taller than what we have there, but far more efficient and far more specific in area as to what we're trying to light.
Okay, I'd hate to irritate anybody on Heatherton Court.
Me too.
That's all.
That would be terrible.
That would not work
Other
well.
questions, council members?
Well, that was my question. At the time the courts were built and the lighting was installed, that was a concern for the neighbors in those areas that the ambient lighting would impact their space. But I agree, I think updated lighting is actually more directional than the older lighting, but I did want to hear that confirmed.
Good. Other questions, council members? Very good. If there are no other questions, is there a motion?
Move to approve the purchase of, move to approve purchase of the tennis court lighting system from NGU Sports Lighting.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion on the motion? I have a little bit here just for the public to hear this. So I just want everybody to understand what's going on when you see these come before us. This is not a whack-a-mole kind of thing that the city's doing. These purchases like this are part of a strategic plan to continue to improve and develop our city amenities, which are already good, and make them truly world-class. So I've lost track of how much we've put into the rec center in the past 5 or 6 years, but I'm guessing it's probably about $3.5 million by the time you do the pool, the expansion, and we are really, if you notice, this building is taking shape every day. We are chipping away. We're not taking in exorbitant taxes to do this all at once, but we have a plan to continue to improve all of our city facilities, the rec center, the library, city hall, the fire stations, to ensure that our infrastructure and our amenities here are truly up to Temple Terrace standards. So, and Carl, you guys have done a fantastic job of keeping that place beautiful and constant improvement, so thank you for that. So. Okay, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays? Most resolution is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any carryover council business or board report? Well, that's board reports are next. Carryover council business from previous meetings. Okay. New business and board reports. We do have one item on the agenda, but are there board reports first?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. Part of it will bleed into the other discussion, but
Yeah.
I'll stay away from it. I wanted to bring council up to speed on our HART meetings this week. We had strategic planning meetings Monday morning where we received some interesting information out of Tallahassee. Prior to the session starting, and we all knew this happened, the Senator Burgess and Representative McClure each filed a bill, their companion bills, which would require FDOT to initiate a consultant study into the consolidation of HART with Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, which would make it a huge organization. Not really. They tried it once before in 2012, but it fell flat on its face, and they resurrected it again for this session. Then Thursday afternoon, they filed an amendment which would drop the Pinellas or the PSTA facet out of the whole study and just eliminate HART. And in so doing, it would transfer everything from HART under the county, the Hillsborough County. Okay. Well, let me rephrase that. They never said where it would go to, but since the county runs most of it and owns almost all of it, it would in all probability revert to the county ownership. It had a committee meeting this morning, I think. I haven't heard the vote on it yet, but it's House Bill HR 1397 and Senate Bill 1532. The study would be initiated immediately. It has to be completed by January 1st of 2024, in which case it would report back to the governor and to the legislature for them to enact something to occur next year. Now, there's a million theories on why, there's a million theories on how it would work. Personally, I think it's a power grab, but that's okay. Elections have consequences, and we have to make sure that our residents who rely upon HART don't end up being short-shifted in the end. So if you have an opportunity, say you don't like it, unless you are in favor of it, of course, obviously. But it's gotten a lot of traction in the last couple of days, and it looks like it may go through in all likelihood. So the other question is, can it be dismantled by a legislative vote since it was created by a referendum? That I don't know. Nobody's had enough time to research what the effect of that would be. So stay tuned. I'll bring back any information that I get going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Abel.
I have a report from the Affordable Housing Board as well, and I'm a little underprepared. I forgot the document that sort of had the cheat sheet about what it all entailed, but off the top of my head, they spent a great deal of time talking about the bill proposed by Senator Pasadomo, and it's a landmark sweeping housing bill that's equivalent, well, not equivalent, but it's bigger than anything since the Sadowski bill from, I think, 91 or 92. And I do have documentation on that. I'll make sure I send it out. I'll make sure that the clerk gets it to send it out to you all. because I think it's really critical that we're aware of that and see how that's going through the committees.
Very good. Thank you. And back to the HART, I checked those bills this afternoon, and I can't remember which one of them passed committee today. I don't remember if it was in the House or the
I didn't
Senate, but
get
one
a
of them
chance to
did.
look. Okay,
So,
thank you.
other board reports, council business?
Yes.
Yes, Kelly?
Mine is really a comment for people here, people watching, to encourage you all to apply for citizen boards. It's something that is a simple way to get involved in the city and to serve the city. And they're not necessarily a huge time commitment, but you can find a board that maybe fits your interests. We have a library board, and we have a River Watch task force, and we have the school support committee, and variance board, and the code enforcement board. And so there's a lot of different ways that you might be able to get involved in the city. And it's a really great way to help have an impact in a small way and get your feet wet and see how much you enjoy working in the city government area as a layperson. But it's a great way to contribute to the city. And Temple Terrace has a long history of volunteer organizations and volunteerism. And this is just one way that you can continue that. So I just want to encourage people.
Thank you, Councilmember.
That's it.
Vice, do you have anything? No. Okay. I do have an item that I'd like the council to consider. So as you know, the parking lot, not the one just west of our building, that one we own. The parking lot to the north of City Hall across the street, we own about a quarter of that. We own the piece of that parking lot that's right as you pull in off of 56th Street. That part is ours. The remainder of that, about 3/4 of that lot, belongs to HART and has since the 80s. So the city, when that property was purchased from the old Seaboard Railroad back in 85, I think it was, the city partnered with HART to purchase that property. HART was the leader of that project. The city contributed funds. We contributed about $22,000 towards the purchase of that property, which was purchased in the name of HART. And so with the city contributing that money, we had a written agreement that at the time HART purchased it to become a park and ride location. That was part of their planning in the 80s, was the park and ride facilities. The agreement that we had with them in exchange for our contribution was that if they decided someday to do two things, one is not to put the park and ride or to sell it, which I guess kind of goes together. If they decided to sell the property or to not to do the park and ride, the city would get the first right of refusal for the property. In fact, the buyback price, not exactly buyback because we didn't pay for the whole thing, but the purchase price was put in the agreement of $67,000. And so the agreement doesn't say specifically that if they decide not to utilize it as park and ride, that we have a right to buy it against their will. It only says if they're going to sell it, that we have the first right of refusal. As we know, they don't have any plans to do the park and ride. Those plans were abandoned a long time ago. In fact, the regular garden variety bus stop that was out there has also since been abandoned in lieu of the one out right here. And so that property is does not factor into HART's future plans at all. We had discussion of this at our last goal-setting meeting while we were formulating the budget, but the council can't take any official action during those meetings. The council at that time, in an informal head nod kind of agreement, everybody was agreeable to have the city manager, Dr. Spina was here at the time, to approach HART and say, hey, we'd like to buy it. And at first HART said, yes, we'd like to sell it. And then they quickly said, well, we don't know what we're going to do. So they said, we lost interest in selling it. So it's still sitting there. What I'd like from the council is permission to pursue the purchase of this property. Now, this property is not crucial to us right at the moment because we're just parking cars there, and we have the right to do that. But that property could be crucial to us at any point, really. In fact, we're searching now for locations for a police department. I don't know if that's the prime spot, but that could potentially be a spot for that. There are other potential uses for that property. The thing is, we don't own it. And for $67,000, or even if we had, even because there's associated costs that we'd probably have to pay too, I think that's a good use of city funds, in that we need to try to get that property if we can. There's no guarantees, we're not gonna sue them over it. We don't have any reason to, but I would really like to go to the HART board. We're in the sunshine, so I know you're on the HART board, but we're here in the sunshine. I'd really like to go to HART management and the HART board and press this issue, but in order to do that, I have to have your approval and your willingness to empower the city manager to write a check if they say yes. But I think that property really needs to be in our inventory. Right now, that's in the middle of our 7 acres here, and there's that property that we don't own. So I'd like to try to get that. Are there questions or comments, or what's your feeling?
I have a comment.
Yes.
During my meetings yesterday, I had an opportunity to sit with the CEO, and we discussed this very subject, knowing that this was coming up tonight. And she couldn't remember the specific details, but she has talked to somebody previously about this within the last year or so. Although I don't think it was Dr. Spitta, but it doesn't matter.
Probably me.
Well, I don't know, but she said that, that we would only get $1 for it. And I said, well, I don't think so, but I didn't have any documentation with me at that point. I said, well, we're interested, we want to do something, so you can probably expect communication from the mayor or something soon. So I think we need to do something, but what could confuse the whole issue is that if the study goes forward, they could restrict HART Board from doing anything of that nature of disposing of any assets other than operational equipment and so forth. That would be my only concern. And then if it reverted to the county, who knows what the county would do with the dollar value? Unless they were brought into the same restrictions as the HART and the city contract, which I don't know anything how that would work or not. But I think it's a good move. I think we need to act on it. I think we need to act on it quickly.
Well, I don't know what the outcome will be, but I can't really go even, I can have soft hallway conversations, but I can't really go actively pursue this without the council's approval.
I'm just giving my acknowledgement that we need to do it.
Hernandez?
So, but one is, I know we couldn't force HART to sell the property, but it's, our contract says that we have the right of first refusal. Is this money, the price that is in the contract, below market value? And are these funds that we would be able to locate, because this is not a budgeted item this year? And if so, where would those funds come from? And if it's below market value, if we were to go through with this process and we decided we didn't need the land for some reason, what's our ability to sell it after that?
Yeah. So, thank you, council members. So the question is, so in this marketplace, that price, yes, is below market value. I think undoubtedly, just the development pattern we're seeing, the price that people are paying for properties is through the roof right now. So I don't have any doubt that it would be. We'd have to clarify what the proportional share of their costs have been over the years. That's something we'd have to clarify. So it's 67,000 plus whatever that is. So we'll have to get that number. As far as the future, whether we could sell the property, I don't believe we have any restrictions in selling that property should we need to, if there was, or develop it ourselves if we wanted to, from what we've read in the agreement to date.
would be the same as disposing of any other property as long as the council has to make a finding that it is in the best interest of the public to
Okay.
dispose of the property. But according to the agreement, it says the purchase of the property for $67,426,041 plus HART's actual out-of-pocket costs expended in connection with acquisition and development of the property. I'm not positive what their acquisition cost was, but it does reference the $22,000 we gave them and mentions that that is approximately 1/4 of the purchase price. So therefore, they would have expended the other, unless they got the money from somebody else, but it seems that they expended another roughly $66,000 to acquire the property. So it would be $67,000 plus the rest of what it cost them to acquire the property. Mentions development, but I don't know that they ever did anything to do any development there at all, so.
And to your other question about where could we fund this from, this would ultimately be the council's decision, but we do have $2.6 million in reserve from the Rolliston Ranch sale that was put into that reserve for future consideration. So this would be, even if it was 120,000 versus 67,000, if that was the number, I think that would be a very worthwhile investment in use of those funds.
So is it possible for us tonight to give approval to start discussing it? I mean, I can't say that I'm in favor of saying, yes, let's go, let's buy the property right now. But I'm not at all opposed to discussing the purchase.
So I think the direction we'd like to take, and the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, is really just to allow the city to approach HART with the understanding of we'd like to consider acquiring the property and start that conversation. Ultimately, whenever we get to a point of having a purchase and sale agreement, we'd have to bring that back to the city council to have you agree to it, and we'd have to bring you a funding source for that as well. So we wouldn't expect the full authorization just to go ahead and tomorrow bag of cash and buy the property from HART. That's not what we're asking for. I think we just want permission to start that discussion and that conversation.
Because there is I mean, it was brought up, our agreement is with HART. If suddenly they don't own the property and they are dissolved and all of their assets are suddenly given to someone else, we don't have a contract or an agreement with the someone else. So we would want to do this while we still have an agreement with the owner.
That's correct. And just to be clear, the city manager is correct. Any land, I mean, a contract would have to be brought back to this body for approval. But I'm trying to ensure that this body wants to do this, because I'm not going to spend the capital to go out there and say, look, we want to buy this and we're ready to, I'm not going to go to them and get everybody all worked up and have them, and to enter into these conversations and then come back here and say, well, we don't want it because it's 125,000, I'm not going to lose the political capital over that if this body's not committed to doing it. Now, if it comes back and they want $250,000, that's a different thing. But I mean, if we're not firm on our desire to do this, tell me that, because I don't want to go down there like I got a blank, not a blank check, but I mean, I've got the council behind me here and only to find out later on that I don't. So, yes, Councilmember Abel.
Do we need a motion to give our consent for this?
We do.
Okay. Would it be authorizing you to do this or for the city manager to do this?
Just adopt the position and we'll work. I mean, we do pretty well at working together, who needs to talk to who, so.
Okay. Well, then I'd like to move for the city to adopt the position to pursue the possibility of acquiring the HART parking lot adjacent to City Hall.
Second.
Discussion? Motion and second, is there discussion?
I'm hesitant to discuss this last item.
Does it need to be discussed?
Council needs to know it, but there'll be a special meeting on Monday afternoon, this coming Monday, to determine the future of the CEO down there. I don't know how that'll complicate it, but it could complicate it very dramatically. I don't know. So just so the council's aware of it, but I do support it. I do support this initiative, 100%.
Other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays? I will keep you posted. Just one other thing real quick, city manager and I will be in Tallahassee at the legislative session tomorrow for Hillsborough Day to advance only the positions that this council has adopted. I hope you trust us about, that at this point. We don't freelance. I always ask your permission to, but we will be up there all day tomorrow. If you need either one of us, we'll be on our cell phones, so. City managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple items. In your agenda, under the city manager section, there is a report on updating you on the status of all the persons to be heard requests that we've had since October. We are going to plan to do this quarterly so that if you ever get a question or you think of it one night, it's like, hey, whatever happened to that issue, you'll have that information at your fingertips. And then the second item I have is actually something that's related to, it's one of these things we unfortunately have to do, but it's not something we take any pleasure in. We've had to condemn a residence in our community due to some significant termite damage and structural damage to the home that made it unsafe to habitate. And in doing that, the homeowner has a right to appeal. The homeowner has appealed, and per the pertinent codes, the appeal would have to be heard by a special magistrate. The city currently does not have a special magistrate on retainer. We've used this very infrequently, which I'm happy about. This is not something we do very regularly. But in this case, we have to move forward. We actually have, the hearing is required to take place within 60 days. The city attorney's assistance has led us to the attorney, private attorney by the name of Richard Fueyo, who has served as the code enforcement special magistrate for the city of Tampa. And if you were to allow me to sign a contract with Mr. Fueyo, he would be working for us as the condemnation appeal magistrate for this one matter at a rate of $200 per hour. So I'm asking for your consent for me to do that. Yes, please.
Well, let me ask questions first. Are there questions of the city manager? Okay, if not, then.
Okay. Move to approve the request by the city manager to retain the services of the special magistrate for this particular case.
Second.
Motion, second. Discussion on the motion. Not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good.
Thank you.
I have a question for the
Yes.
city manager.
Okay.
And possibly the clerk. So, question is about the report that you were going to give us quarterly, but it's really about all of the agenda items and the attachments. And what is the public able to see on our agenda and on the agenda support items?
Very glad you asked that, actually. So we are, when I arrived here, one of the oddities I found with this community was that none of the backup is made available to the public online, which if you go to, I probably imagine most communities in the United States today, the public can access that information. So we've had this conversation internally with staff. There's some concerns about doing that. I guess a few years ago, some challenges that were posed in other communities across the state. But in our research, and we've looked at this extensively and looking at communities all across the state of Florida, there are probably more communities that provide that material than those that don't. So my position and what I'd like to see moving forward is the next meeting, for example, we're going to move to a new software system, Granicus. Hopefully you've become familiar with it. And if we can pull that off at the next meeting, I'd like to have all our backup documentation available to the public. And whether we need to put a disclaimer on that, we'll work with that. But again, I think it's important. I mean, I see it here. If you look on that wall right there, you got the city's mission, and transparency is one of the biggest elements of it. And I feel that we need to be transparent, and that makes it easier. We should not make it harder for our residents to get that material. So that's the direction I'd like to take the community, and hopefully you'll agree with me.
And what would be available to the public after the meeting's complete and the minutes are not a word for word and we're on YouTube, but something like this in particular, this report is not, it was in the presentation, it's not necessarily part of the YouTube video visually. So how would the public gain access to agenda items that we see but aren't necessarily displayed during a meeting?
So every report that would be attached to your agenda, so as the council, you see all the reports, you have links to all those reports. All those links would be available to the public as well. So on the Granicus system, the way that particular software does it is that you'll have an agenda, and under each subheading of each item, there'll be links, however many backup items there could be up to a dozen different links that are associated with that particular item. And so the public would be able to see everything that would be presented either in document form or presentation, for example. They'd have that access to that. And obviously, like you mentioned, the YouTube channel and the minutes, so there'd be a wealth of opportunities for the public to, from home, to pick up everything that they needed to.
Okay. That's it.
Anything else, Mr. Beal?
I do not.
City Attorney's report.
Yes, I have a couple of things. One is a lien reduction that we did. This is for the address of 8650 North 56th Street. In that particular case, there was, I believe, a pylon sign. It was hit by a car. This did not, was no fault of the property owner. However, and he did attend code enforcement board, but in trying to fix the sign, he was running into a supply chain problem and was unable to get the materials necessary to repair the sign as it was. The lien amount was $1,375. The city's costs were $220.60. Because this was due to no fault of his, we've reduced the lien to $50, but we did also recoup the city's cost, and he has submitted a check of $270.60. So that's one. The second issue concerns what is being referred to as the Walmart settlement. In 2018, litigation was commenced against, by various government agencies, against Walmart and other pharmaceutical distributors due to the opioid epidemic, and concerned their prescription opioid medication practices. This case eventually, actually Walmart, I believe, approached the state because they were being sued by multiple subdivisions. They approached the state in an effort to settle everything at once. So the state, although the state had sued other entities, it had not actually sued Walmart. But this finally settled all of these little cases. And I think that the state signed a settlement in October of last year. We have been contacted by the state. We also, you all had approved us participating in the settlement negotiations a while back. And we were one of the, just about every city in Florida agreed to this. And now we need to, I'm asking you tonight to authorize the city manager to sign the form that the state has sent us that concerns our distribution. So Temple Terrace is set to receive a one-time payment from Walmart in the amount of $27,363. There are 250 payees. We are also going to be receiving repetitive payments from some of the other companies like CVS, a company called Janssen. There were a number that I had never heard of before. Janssen is apparently related to Johnson & Johnson. And so CVS, we're going to be receiving $3,036. There's one, I believe, called Oregon, $1,577. We're going to be receiving from Janssen $5,357. And there's various other payments that we're going to be receiving. And as I said, this is going to be extended over a number of years. that we are going to be getting multiple payments. Walgreens had agreed to pay the state of Florida $683 million, so that's why there's going to be multiple payments over time. There is a restriction on the use of that money. I was trying to, although we don't have that, I was trying to find that, and let's see. We have to use it for opioid remediation. It says that there's an Exhibit C attached, but the settlement that I have has no Exhibit C was provided to this. But it's supposed to be used to address the misuse and abuse of opioid products, treat or mitigate opioid use or related disorders, mitigate other alleged effects of, including on those injured as a result of the opioid epidemic. And there is a list of expenditures that do qualify. I will obtain that. Also, Walmart is going to be dispensing 672,000 it's generic for Narcan kits to first responders over the following 10 years as part of this settlement. So, going back to my original request, if you can make a motion to authorize the city manager to sign our subdivision settlement participation form to be returned to the state, I'd appreciate it.
Good, thank you. Councilmember, questions for the city attorney?
Just curious, what's the sum total of all the settlements, do you know, for us?
I don't know the total of all of them. There was a 4-week trial in Pasco, and that's why Walgreens then went to the state and said, let's discuss settlement. And Walgreens had settled for the $683 million. I believe Walmart settled for $215 million, but those are the only big settlements that I know about.
I think the question is, do you know what the total is that's going to
For
come
us.
to
To
Temple
us,
Terrace?
no, I don't, because I don't know how many years we're gonna be receiving all these smaller payments from the different companies.
Just curious.
And although I have to say, although it's called the Walmart settlement, apparently Walmart was not the major offender in all of this. There were other companies that investigations showed were more at fault.
Other questions for the city attorney? Is there a motion?
I move to approve or to authorize the city manager to sign the subdivision settlement forms.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays? Very good. Anything else, Mr. Schoen?
That's it.
That brings us to the end of our agenda, or is there any other business to come before the council tonight? Directors? You just want to go home. I know how you are. Good. If there's no other business to come before the council, we will stand adjourned.